Hello and welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabrielle Nicolay, and today I am delighted to be joined by Ayelet Marinovich. Did I get it right?
You got it right. Yay.
Ayelet, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, your background, who you are and why you're here, please.
Sure. Well, I am a pediatric speech language pathologist by trade, have been for, I guess, about a decade-ish, more than a decade. I don't know. What year is it? Who knows?
A long time.
Yes. And had always focused primarily on those like very early communicators, be it early symbolic communication in terms of AAC or early intervention. And in 2014, I had my own first child and was, thrown into the throes of early parenthood. And as I think many of us professionals in this or adjoining fields experience when we become parents or caregivers in our own lives, it's a bit of a jolt, right? Because we really thought we knew all the things, and sure, we know some things, and those are helpful things for anyone to know, but it's all of those in between things that those pieces of vulnerability and overwhelm and sleep deprivation and desire to get it right and do, I mean, it's that doesn't go away regardless of how much you know about baby and toddler development.
So interesting. I always say the minute I became a parent is the minute I became like incrementally, exponentially, not incrementally, exponentially a better therapist. Because now I understood why parents would feed their child white food for years because that's all they would eat. And I got it.
And that's real. Yeah.
And that's real. And I understood it. Whereas before I was like, well, why is this happening? And then in an instant, I understood why.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Right. And it doesn't just go away after month 6. It continues.
Yeah.
Sorry. Spoiler alert for any of y'all who are experiencing this for the first time. But so when I had my first child, we were living very far from home. I am a person who has always valued community and connection. And so I really craved that and wanted to focus on that in that time period. And so I was very privileged to be in a place where, I was in the UK, I was in London, which has many organizations, nonprofits, systems in place for incoming new parents and caregivers. And so I started to look around at what those were and took a prenatal yoga class and those kinds of things and started meeting other people who were in the same season of life, right? And making friends and then knowing that, oh, well, it would be fun to be able to continue this after the babies come. And so I started hosting these sort of caregiver and baby sessions out of my home. And really what we talked about came out of my own needs, for sure, my own needs for connection and community, and play, and then wanting to really focus on creating an inclusive space for all of us, because we were from all over the world, right? It's a metropolitan area. And so I had other folks coming over who had emigrated to the UK at various points in their lives and coming from a real variety of cultural and linguistic experiences and backgrounds. And and so we were all sort of asking very similar questions about what am I supposed to be doing with this tiny
What
thing?
do I do all day
What
with
do I
this
do all
thing?
day? Right. And also, like, what am I experiencing? What's going on down there? What, all of the very vulnerable pieces of early parenthood. And so out of that came, these questions as the babies got older and older, and as, I guess, word spread that I was hosting these groups that felt like a safe and nice place to be.
Yeah.
Which I was, very intentional and very honored to be creating and helping to facilitate. Um, but I do think of it as a real co-creation, right, of
Mm.
all of those folks who were there in the beginning. And then really writing those down in a developmental sequence in terms of like, okay, what are all of these, like, what are the things that we can be doing with our young children really from day one, from before day one, in fact, um when we have capacity, right? Because
Yeah.
that's a huge part of it, is not feeling guilty for not doing all the things and buying all the things and not being all the things that we can't possibly for our young children, but really helping folks see the everyday routines and the simplicity in what we are already doing and connecting those things to early development. And as these babies started to enjoy social games or social routines like peekaboo, like connecting the dots between, guess what? There is actually a developmental reason why this is valuable. And it shows that your baby has understood this, and it's has to do with object permanence and blah, blah, blah. Right. And connecting these pieces for families, which over time, I knew this was where I could, like, quote unquote shine, right? Because I knew those things because of my educational and professional background. But that was something that a lot of people didn't know or see or understand. And so that gift of being able to connect those dots
Yeah.
was something that I really found valuable as something that I could share, and really was hearing from others who were attending and participating that was of extreme value, right? Not just how do I play with my baby, but how do I know that what I'm doing is also really having an effect on their learning and their brain development and their social emotional development and their communicative development and their motor development.
I mean, you're going into
That's all of it.
it's all of it, right? And it's so interesting because this is exactly, it's funny, as you were talking, I was like, so quickly you are stepping into this kind of peer mentor, let's call it that,
Sure. Mhm.
because you do have this knowledge. And what happens, and this was for me too, when I had my kids and they were so young, I saw the milestones playing out,
Yeah.
and I saw the cause and effect, or the additive effect of whatever it is that I was doing, which, I suspect for both of us, comes pretty naturally, either before our training or as a result of our training, or
Yeah.
both.
Sure.
Where you can see the through line, but
Yeah.
as you say, many parents don't. And they're like, well, I know I'm supposed to, whatever, read to my baby.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and
what does that look like?
what does that look like? What does that mean? Am I supposed to be like pointing out the words? Like
Right.
it
Right.
doesn't, there's no context.
Right. What's the value of this activity, and how can I? Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you create, I'm astonished, by the way, that you have basically a newborn at this time, or a very young child, and you're writing down a framework. So,
I mean, it was not a framework at that. I mean, it was just right. It was scribble scrabble. I still have these like beautiful little notebooks that are not beautiful inside. They're just like literally, blah, 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 blah. This is what we did today. Chicken scratch,
yeah.
And then over time, I think it was more I was like, I know that this is valuable. I know that what we're doing is good. And I would also survey people, right? I would ask people. I would do what I like to call and share with the licensed facilitators that are now part of the facilitators of what is now the Learn with Less curriculum, is doing, social listening of actually asking, like, what is valuable? What do you find valuable about humming? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? What can we do what do you need, right? And hearing from folks about what consistently was being brought up
Mhm.
as a value in this sort of family centered practice of parent or caregiver education were, a space that I could go and just get out of my home.
Number
That's
one.
important. um or virtual, right? That I don't actually have, but like a social experience for me, a social experience for my child, a learning experience for me, a learning experience for my child. Um, and just like a way to share and commune with other folks going through it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my
so a
God.
lot of empathy building. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I have so many questions about the mechanics. So you mentioned learn with less. We're going to have lots
Yeah.
of show notes about that.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about how folks can plug in a second. But you mentioned also care certification and training.
Mm,
So just, sketch
yeah.
it out for us. What's
Yeah.
the program? But
Yeah.
side in.
So really, basically what ended up happening was that I wrote these things down. I put it all together. Over time, self-published these 2 books, which are like a week by week, essentially record of what we did, what folks were asking, and how you can utilize what your child may or may not be already doing, what might be emerging, what you might see, and what you can encourage around this time developmentally. Whether or not you have a um 6-month-old that is meeting quote unquote all the milestones or not, like these are things that you can be aware of and can encourage just based on very simple ways that you can interact through play, through language, through music or musical elements, and through movement that you can do. And then then I saw that like there was a real need. I could only do so much in terms of affecting folks in my physical or immediate community wherever I was living. And also then virtually starting in like 2017 when I had my second baby, I started also like doing virtual classes because I couldn't get out and do these classes. I didn't have childcare. I didn't have, it was like too much. So, um, but then over time realizing like, oh, if I can package this in a way that is, not only the actual curriculum is useful, but also for me, it was very, very important to have a very clear um, training that produced a high quality facilitator. And of course, for me to be able to do that, that took some time to really um, tease out what it was about facilitation and this program that makes it different, that makes it unique and able to serve families in an inclusive way, and that allows a facilitator to feel confident in their ability to expand the impact that they can have in either their own business or in for the organization that they work for that's serving families, often in multiple ways, right? Through therapy, through these sort of developmentally enriching classes, through other types of services. But and then how can we also do some parallel processing for those facilitators of we want to be able to hold those folks in a safe and understood way, and in an environment that sort of imitates as closely as we can the experience that they're then going out and trying to create for families.
Yep.
And
It's
that's
nested
an
dolls.
important, yeah, that's an important piece for me because I know there are many um certifications or other kinds of programs that focus on, early development or family-centered practice, and that's all great. And I don't see a whole lot of high high touch like real support, um or how can we create, having systems in place and processes in place that represent the values of the program itself and the way that we want to show up in the world and that are lived into with those. Because unless you're actively creating systems that serve families inclusively, that serve facilitators, right? That are creating the world in which you would like to live, then they're going to replicate systems of oppression, right? In whatever way that shows up. So,
well, which is such an interesting. Yeah, no, because what I'm hearing, and I'm sure the listeners are too, this is, first of all, the way you are thinking about this is very broad and very deep all at the same time, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, you've created this nested doll effect of you've trained the trainers. So you've trained the caregivers, the participants. Now you've added this component, if I'm getting the timing right, of training now the new facilitators to be able to kind of multiply this effect. But what you've also done is created a container for those facilitators ongoing that lets them come back and get support, get resources, get nourishment, if you will. And in so doing, ensures the fidelity of
the program.
Of the program, which is, I mean, I'm like on fire on so many different levels. Okay. But here's what I want to talk about next. We could go.
I think we could do like 17 of these, Nicole.
Correct. And maybe we will. Who knows?
That's fine. Yeah.
We'll do a special series.
I'm here for it.
Excellent. So the thing that is that I find so attractive about Learn with Less is
right. And that's the name. That's the name of the program itself. Just by the way, in case we never said that.
Okay, but here's the thing. Learn with what I just said, right? It's broad, it's deep, it's rich, it's multi-layered, and it's so effing simple. Yeah. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like, how do we do Learn with Less? What are its, I don't know, do you have some core principles or whatever?
Yeah. Right. So I think what we aim to do for both families and educators / therapist practitioner type people is to help folks really help folks understand how to support and connect with tiny humans, babies and toddlers, primarily birth to 3, without having to buy another toy, right? That's sort of the aim. That's the mission, right? And we do that in a variety of ways. Like all of our content is based around this. Our podcast episodes, for instance, and then of course, any product or offering or service or event or community event that we hold is also based around doing that. So, we have basically our like 4 pillars of the framework that we engage in that really address all of the also 4 major areas of early development, which we could define as cognitive development, communicative development, motor and sensory development, and social and emotional development. So you pair those with these 4 pillars of play, talk, sing, and move. And here you have this, what I like to sort of refer to as like a developmental matrix, right? Where you can support cognitive development through play, through language, through music, through movement. You can support communicative development, right? And so on and so forth with all of those things. And so really it's just about helping the adults in the room see the ways in which we can implement and utilize these types of things, right? Playfulness and communication and early literacy and musical elements and movement into all of those areas of development to just support what the child is doing, and often to engage or follow their lead in what they're already doing and just add a little musical element, right? So if you're like changing your child's diaper, which may or may not be a pleasant experience for either of you, It depends. I
Yeah.
hate it when you hear the like quote unquote parenting expert, and that term I abhor also.
Yep.
We can talk about that later if you want to.
Yep.
But and they're like, oh well, all you have to do is like put it into the routine of the life, and like, when your child is getting changed, like do this. And you're like, that's like the worst time for me to do that, right? So any example I give, like just use it, like that's one specific example. And if it doesn't work for you, then what are some other opportunities in your life that you could see it working for you, right? Like how could you utilize more of a musical element, whether it's adding a rhythm or distracting or engaging with some song that that child likes, or adding something silly, or bringing joy into the routine, or making music with like literally the diaper box, right? That could be a percussion instrument that can make a very silly sound, right? And you can make that sound, and maybe your child will imitate you making that, right? All of these tiny little moments,
I'm just thinking
yeah,
about the
open,
snap,
shut them, open, shut them, right?
yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Are ways to bring in any of these pillars of play or talk or sing or move. And, we can talk like they are all interlapping as well, right? They all work together. It's all a very holistic environment, just like learning is very holistic for infants and toddlers.
What's at the center of all of this, which is, again, I didn't point it out earlier, and it's all embedded and threaded into the thing, is the relationship.
Yes.
All of this is getting at
Yes.
the relationship between child and caregiver.
Yes.
In a way that supports the development of the smaller person, but also that empowers the big person to know that what they're doing is rich and nourishing to the little human.
Yeah.
And that
exactly.
it just feels it. I can
Exactly.
feel the level of sort of robustness of this program as you're talking about it. And this part of me wants to be like, but what do we do?
Yeah.
Like, how do we do the things? And we'll do another episode on like, how do we do the things? But this, because
I have a lot of examples on my website and on my Instagram and all. Just look up Learn with Less and you'll find those things.
One of the things I love about, actually, and just to be specific for just a second, is, and I have one over there, but I often see pictures with like a toilet paper roll or a paper towel roll. Do you want to just for like a second, talk about that?
Yeah.
Why is that? How is that a toy? I yell it. What the hell?
Yeah. Right. Well, and again, I get just as a qualified disclaimer, like you don't have to use a toilet paper roll if you don't feel that that is sanitary. Use a empty paper towel roll. Spray it down. I don't care what you do. Use something else. It is just again, one example of a way that we can use. So a paper towel roll, since I don't have one right in front of me, but I like to have something tactile. I have like a spool of thread, so that's what I'm going to hold, which could also be, used in a similar way if you wanted to. So it can be a trumpet, it could be a microphone, it can be a hat, as everything can be. Everything
clearly is a hat,
right?
even a
obviously.
shoe.
Yeah, it can be a finger puppet. It can be utilized as anything you want it to, or anything your child sees it as. It can also be symbolic. It can be a brush or a lipstick container, or something that you put on or in your ear or whatever, right? It can also spin and roll and turn, and you can use it to blow a cotton ball through. So all of those things are ways that it can support blowing, right? Or some kind of like focused activity where you're doing some visual spatial learning, right? Motor development. You can take turns and do something together and like sing about what you see or what you want, or like make a request. Social emotional development, communicative development, right? You can put it behind your head and make it reappear again. Object permanence, cognitive development, right? All of these, you're hitting on all of the things just by watching what your child wants to do with it, or offering an idea, right? I didn't even mention like a telescope binocular kind of a thing, right? There's so many things that you can do at all ages. My kids still, who are almost 7 and almost 10, are very excited when the toilet paper roll is over. They're like, "Oh, great. Okay,
Yeah.
that's mine. Mom,
Yeah.
don't throw that away. That's mine."
Yeah. I want to tell you a story. I had
Mhm.
friends who moved to Ecuador for
Mhm.
like a year. So they brought almost no toys.
Yeah.
And by the end of the year, they each had a collection of toilet paper rolled dolls that had been dressed and
Yeah.
cared for and played with in the most beautiful of ways. By the way, it was a sibling pair, about 18 months apart, and it was magnificent. And they were about the, in that 8 to 10 year old range when they did it.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, this is the thing, right? These everyday household objects they're hidden in plain view. And toys are realistically they're for the grown up, right? Like we buy them because we think that that is what our children are supposed to play with. And yes, of course, there are certain toys that are created for a certain age range, and that yes, you can ensure that there is like a standard of safety or whatever it is that you're concerned about. And um you can also support your child's development with everything that you have in your recycling box, right? Everything that you find safe or deem safe.
yep.
I mean, I'm looking at my desk right now and I can see a chopstick, a straw, a container, a coaster, right? I mean, all of those kinds of things. Yes, any kind of open and
Have
shut
like a
zipper, right? Exactly. Uh Old Band-Aid box, those are rich with developmental value. And I like to say that the emperor has no toys, folks, right? Like it's what you already have. It's you, it's your fingers, it's anything that can fit on your head, it's your eyes and your it's what's attached to you and what's in your art
I
in
mean,
your
I'm
home.
just reminded of, the Tupperware drawer.
Mhm.
Um, it's, we got this gorgeous kitchen set, and they
Huh.
did eventually play with the kitchen set, the little one that was there. But first, really what they wanted to do was unpack the Tupperware drawer and figure out which lids went with what and
Right.
what sound did it make when I was banging it against the oven versus the fridge.
Right. And there are ways to do that for any caregiver. Like you don't have to have a lot of space. You don't have to have if you don't have a lot of space and you want that kitchen space to be your own, you can put a bunch of stuff in a cardboard box that you're not using and that is safe. Snack containers,
Yep.
mixing bowls, whatever it is that your child can have access to, because really what they're interested in doing is starting to imitate you and touch what you're touching and do what you're doing.
Yep.
And so my kids actually had this, beautiful IKEA kitchen set and they never used it because they just wanted to use what I was using. And so the wooden spoon and the mixing bowl,
Yep.
that was what they used.
Yep.
So
So
this is this is number one, this is for everyone, right? This is not just for folks who can afford toys. Um, this is also like, where are you putting your money? What do you want to do with your money? What do you value? And guess what? You like all of those wonderful toy subscription boxes that you're being targeted for on social media that are, $50 to $100 a month. Just because you can't afford them or don't want to spend your money there doesn't mean that you're a bad parent or caregiver. Guess what? It means that you can do whatever you want to utilize what you have. And so I think, we need to talk about access, we need to talk
mm,
about equity, and we need to talk about frankly capitalism and the value of what where are we putting our values?
and I
And
think the question becomes for me, and again, this is like 2 more episodes at least. And we're going to wrap here in a second. But the question does become, I think, the one you're asking, which is, how do I choose to spend my money? And by the way, do I feel a sense of ownership,
Oh no,
connection?
I lost you. I'm so sorry.
Am I here?
You're back. You're
Okay.
back. You
Do
said
I have
the question of
how am I choosing to spend my money? And am I doing it consciously in a way that supports my values, the way I view the world, also my income, like, am I overspending or not?
Yeah.
But also, am I spending in a way that makes me feel at the center, that I have agency? In other words, it's fine if I, for whatever reason occurs to me, and I'm doing it consciously, I decide I'm going to do this toy box thing.
Right.
I think that's fabulous. They're beautiful. They're safe. They're whatever. Are they necessary? Absolutely not.
Right.
But
does it give you that confidence? Exactly.
Sure.
Right. Because that's what's at the center of all of this.
Yeah.
And also understanding that it's not the toy. It's never about the toy.
Never.
As you said earlier, Gabrielle, it's about the interaction. And so what we do through our classes, through, the books, through all of our content is really about helping to facilitate the connection between caregiver and child, because that's, as you said, like, that's where all the magic happens.
That's where
And
all the
help,
magic
not
happens.
only that, but helping that caregiver see the magic in those mundane everyday objects and routines of life.
Yeah.
That's what we do. That's what we are trying to help folks understand, right? That whether it is the toy subscription box or whether it is anything in your recycling box that you feel comfortable handing to your baby or toddler, you are capable. I want to help, we want to help you to have the capacity and the confidence to put that relationship between you and your child, or you and the children who you are supporting, at the forefront, because that is what helps young children learn and develop, right?
Ooh.
Is that support and then that connection. Yeah.
Amen. Okay. Perfect place to pause, if not end. If people want to learn more about you, how do they do that? And you have something that you would like to offer, so I invite you to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can find me anywhere at Learn with Less. That's the handle of my Instagram and my Facebook and my TikTok and all the places that are on the internet, and at learnwithless.com. And if you would like to sort of understand a bit more about those 4 pillars of play, talk, sing, move, and how they sort of interplay with those areas of learning and development, I do have a free download that's our Learn with Less infant and toddler development blueprint, and it goes through all of those things. And it's free. It's at learnwithless.com/blueprint. So you're welcome to put in your email there and we'll send it right to you.
All right. And there will be a link to all of that in the show notes. Ayelet Marinovich. Oh, I got it right again. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Gabrielle. I really appreciate the opportunity.
It was fun.